signaling to others and to yourself that you're serious about whatever endeavor you're taking on. That's a real, it can be a source of motivation, but also, help advance your career.
Today, we sit down with Alex Hutchinson, a former competitive runner turned acclaimed science journalist. With a unique background in physics and quantum computing, Alex made a bold pivot from life in the laboratory to becoming a leading voice in the world of endurance, adventure, and human performance writing. He's a contributing writer for major publications and the author of books like Endure and the upcoming The Explorer's Gene. In this conversation, Alex shares how his experience as an elite athlete has shaped his disciplined approach to writing, why trial and error still trumps the latest science in athletic training, and how to strike that elusive balance between pursuing new horizons and savoring your successes. He unpacks the mindset behind tackling big projects, his pivot to science journalism, lessons from exploring both literally and intellectually, and offers powerful advice for entrepreneurs seeking fulfillment in their own careers. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. And if you love this podcast, please leave a review at ratethispodcast.com/Beyond Fulfillment. All right, Alex Hutchinson, welcome to Beyond Fulfillment.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. We appreciate you taking the time. Okay, so let's get right into it. Alex, how did your experience as a competitive runner shape your approach to the discipline and the perseverance that's been required in your writing career?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the experience of competitive running is like a metaphor for everything in my life. So it's definitely a big factor, and um, I think pushing myself as an athlete gives me some context as to what it means to work hard. Like it, there's nothing I do in my experience as a writer that that it compares in any way to the sacrifices and the hardships and discipline I put through as a runner. So that's been a great context. I guess the one other big thing is, one thing I learned in running is you set a huge goal for yourself. Sometimes you're lucky enough to make it. You think your life is going to change. As soon as you achieve that goal, you're like, all right, I think I can go faster. What can I do next? And so as a journalist, that has really been something I've kept in mind. Things have gone well. I've published articles in places that I've always dreamed of publishing. I've learned to expect and to know that achieving one thing just gives birth to the next goal. And so you've got to celebrate your wins when you can, but not expect that achieving something you've dreamed of is going to suddenly make you a different person.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And entrepreneurs can certainly relate to that because no matter how big the goal is, if you do hit it, there's another goal immediately. So so important to enjoy the journey and savor the I guess the thrill of pursuing that goal because once you hit it, like you said, it just gives birth to another one.
Yeah, and it's a tough balance or a tricky tension because you want to stay hungry, but you also want to enjoy the successes, and you have to try and find ways of holding both those thoughts in your mind at the same time.
Okay. And so what was the pivotal moment that led you to transition from the world of physics and quantum computing to science journalism?
Yeah, this was a probably like a 10-year slow drip. If I had to pick uh, a kind of moment of epiphany, one that sticks in my mind is, I was working as a physics researcher and we were putting in long hours in the lab. This is in at the NSA, just outside Washington, D.C. So we'd sometimes be there till 8, 9 at night, or sometimes later if you were running experiments, and then be back in the lab early the next morning. And I remember coming in one morning and one of my colleagues asking, like, "Hey, Alex, did you see that article about such and such a thing in Physics Today?" And I was like, "Article in Physics Today? Are you kidding me? I was here in the lab till 10 o'clock last night. I did not go home and read Physics Today. I had all the physics I could handle." But I realized that my colleague, he was in the lab till 10 o'clock, and then he went home and he was just jazzed about physics. So he went home and read Physics Today. And I thought about that and I thought, are there topics that I'm as passionate about? And yes, there are. Is it physics? No, I enjoy physics. It's okay, but it's not something that I like. I'm excited to go home and read about. And that was kind of I still remember that moment because I was like, yeah, I gotta make a change so that I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, where I'm like motivated internally to want to go and dig more. And so that led to a change to journalism, not because journalism was what I was passionate about, because I saw journalism as a vehicle to be able to dig into questions about human performance and stuff that I was really fascinated by.
Okay. Yeah, and that's great, great self-awareness, and particularly that you still remember that moment, that was a big aha for you. Um, okay, so you mentioned journalism as the vehicle to delve into these other subjects. I mean, what about human performance and endurance sports and the outdoors? Like, what made you decide to focus your journalistic lens there?
Yeah, that wasn't I will say that wasn't like my plan right out of the gate. When I started out, I was a freelancer writing about, basically anything to pay the bills. So I was writing about music and philosophy and accounting. I went to accounting conferences to write for an accounting newsletter. And I enjoyed the diversity, but I found myself kind of drawn because I had a background as a competitive runner, but also a background in this sort of science world that I could kind of take those two parts of my background and combine them to be a whole greater than the sum of their parts by writing about the science of performance. But it wasn't just that I was sort of had the background to write about it. It's also that I found it fascinating. And I think where that comes back to is my experiences as a runner, where I wanted running to be, I wanted my performances to be very predictive, scientifically determined that what I have to do is increase my VO2 max and my running economy, and that will improve my performance. And I should be able to run such and such a time. That's never how sports performance works. There's always the intangibles, the unknowns. On any given day, one person is going to rise up to the challenge better than everyone else. And I found that I couldn't find that in this physiology of the time. And so I was really interested in the psychology and how the brain uh, determines and influences our capacities and our limits. So both my successes and failures as a runner made me interested in that angle. And so it ended up being something I really wanted to dig into professionally.
Okay. And so when you wrote your first book, I mean, how was that process compared to the regular column writing that you'd been doing as far as like new challenges or unexpected rewards?
Yeah, there's always a grass is greener kind of phenomenon where when you're writing short columns or articles, you're like, oh man, I wish I had more time to interview more people, or I've interviewed so many people. I wish I had more space. I wish I could write about this in more detail. I wish I could really dig into this topic instead of having to just do it, submit the article, move on to something new. Uh, then when you're writing a book, you're like, holy crap, I wish I could just be done with this and move on to a different topic. Like it's been 2 years or whatever. So there's a bit of grass is greener, but they are very different challenges. And overall, for me, um, I really like getting into the weeds of these are very complicated questions of how the body works, how the mind works, how it all comes together. There's fascinating research, so I like having the freedom um, to really follow those rabbit holes as far as I can follow them. But boy, it is hard to sustain your own interest over a course of multiple years in it to put together a book, but then also to write something that's going to be interesting, on page 200, not just on page three. And so, and that's a challenge that sometimes you succeed at and sometimes you fail, but it's a very, very uh, long grind compared to the sort of more instant gratification of writing an article and the next week you're reading it in the paper.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And, talking about athletic training, why do you think the trial and error approach, still holds such significant weight, as far as like elite athletes and how they train, especially with the volume of scientific research that's out there now?
That's a great question. And I don't have a great answer because I think uh, all the scientists are still wondering the same thing. It's like, why haven't we been able to design the perfect training program? Like we've got so many studies. Why is it that the best athletes in the world still generally train based on the trial and error experience of other athletes and other coaches, informed by science for sure, but the science, there's no question that scientists are following rather than leading when it comes to designing training programs. Why is that? I think one big thing is human variability. Like people are different. So you do studies with 10 athletes, or if you're lucky with 20 or 50 or 100 athletes, you can get an average result, but that might not tell you how an individual athlete is going to respond to a given intervention, to a given training program. So having a coach who's there on the grounds watching how things work and tweaking the training in response to your individual performance, that ends up being a more powerful way of designing training. And then not just variability between people, but variability from day to day. What works for me today may not work for me tomorrow, or may not be the best training program. So all of this makes it really hard to come to firm conclusions about what the best training program is. The bottom line is that I'm a big believer in science. I think we learn a lot from science, but it's trial and error that's driving the bus when it comes to training.
Yeah. Okay. And what parallels have you found between, the mindset that was required for you to push your physical limits as an athlete and a runner, compared to the mental fortitude that you need to tackle some of these ambitious writing projects?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is just the recognition that how I set my goals and what I believe and what I tell myself is going to have a powerful effect. That ultimately, if I don't have confidence or belief that I can have a reasonable chance of fulfilling a goal, then it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how well I train or how many hours I sit in front of the screen. If I don't think I can write the article, if I don't have belief in myself, that's not going to work. So I think that aspect of the mental, rather than like, it's almost easier to see in the work capacity. I know that journalism is not about how fast I can move my fingers on the keyboard. Like the real challenge is not typing. It's doing the mental work. And it's you learn that in running, even though you might fall into the trap of thinking that running is about moving your legs. But really, the person who wins the race is not the person who moves their legs the most. It's the person who has, uh, over a long period of time, set challenging goals and showed up every day to work towards those goals. Because which I guess is I think that's another important thing, is that you learn in running that no big workout, or in training, that doesn't you can't win a race by doing one amazing workout, no matter how hard you push yourself. And so you have to, in fact, you can lose a race by doing by deciding just getting insanely motivated and doing a crazy workout such that you can't recover the next day, and you have to miss a few days training. And so the value of consistent pushing over a long period of time, you have to learn that in running. And I think it ends up being really valuable in most pursuits, including in journalism, where it's like, as much as I would like to be able to churn out a book in 2 weeks, I can't. It's years, and so I have to have a sustainable way of showing up every day, or at least every work day, and chipping away at those goals.
In today's business environment, optimizing your efficiency is critical. Many entrepreneurs find themselves spending major time on important yet time-consuming business operations tasks. This can drain the bandwidth needed for higher level work, leading to missed opportunities and increased stress. Leverage Assistance offers a solution with access to highly qualified virtual assistants specializing in business operations. They ensure their team members are well trained in the latest AI software and tools, so their time is utilized at the right level on harder, higher ROI tasks. These professionals can support key areas such as project management, data analysis, process optimization, and more, allowing you to focus on core business growth priorities. Leverage Assistants has a rigorous 12-hour vetting process for all their assistants, which includes comprehensive reference checks, in-depth interviews, skill set evaluations, and a culture index survey. Support can be provided within 24 hours, or they can source to very specific skill sets and experiences. For a limited time, Leverage Assistance is extending a free 1-month trial to our listeners, so you can experience firsthand the benefits of dedicated business operations support. To find out how Leverage Assistance can increase your operational effectiveness and to take advantage of this exclusive trial, click the link below. Yeah, so true. Okay, and for your latest book, The Explorer's Gene, what made you decide to look at the science of exploring? And I mean, what insights did you gain from that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm one of those people who, as a kid, I always loved wandering around in the woods, and I still do love going on backpacking and canoeing trips. So the general topic of exploring was always sort of appealing to me. But what kind of launched me is, so after my last book, Endure, came out in 2018. Endure did actually surprisingly well. It kind of set me up as the science of endurance guy. That's the topic I'd been writing about for about a decade leading up to that book. And I had this, I realized, this could be me. I could be the science of endurance guy for the rest of my career. I could stay in this role. And if so, I need to get working on Endure 2, like some sort of follow-up book to Endure. And I had a lot of people encouraging me, saying, "Hey, that's the smart thing to do." But what I realized, ultimately, in the same way, similar to the realization that I just didn't have the passion for physics, I just I tried to pay attention to what I was interested in, and less, I just wasn't interested in rewriting the same book in a different way, or repackaging the same insights, or refollowing the same research. I was drawn to doing something new. And at that time, I didn't even know what it was that I wanted to do that was new. I just knew I wanted to do something different. And I started to connect that to other aspects of my life, and, the ways I like to travel, the ways I like to order food in restaurants, and so on. And I started to wonder, like, what is it? Why am I always looking for something new? Why aren't I happy with what I have? And so that led me to say, well, maybe I should dig into that. Maybe I should dig into this exploring urge that I have, and that I think ultimately I've come to conclude we all have in different ways, or in different degrees, or in different domains in our lives. So that's where it started. I wanted to understand why I couldn't just be happy with what I had, and always wanted to pursue something new.
Okay. And I mean, that's certainly a topic entrepreneurs can relate to in terms of new ideas constantly, new businesses, new directions. But another important topic too, and I think you've touched on this as well, is, of course, it's fun to explore, and it can certainly satisfy a certain urge for all of us. But having the wisdom to determine when it's the right time to explore, and maybe when it's not the right time. Can you talk
Yeah,
more about that within your journey?
for sure. So when I started on this project, I assumed that the subtitle of the book would be something like "Why We All Need to Explore More," or "Why Exploring is the Best Thing for All of Us." Um, and ultimately, I ended up with a more nuanced perspective that exploring is great, and it's certainly like the exploring urge, I think, is what drives entrepreneurs, and it's an essential part of their character and their what they do. But I also realized that there's a value to understanding uh, you know, when to pass up the urge to explore. That if in the entrepreneurial context, let's say, if you're someone who comes up with new business ideas all the time, that's great. You've got an idea, you've got another idea, you've got another idea. But you're not going to get anywhere if you don't eventually pick one or more of these ideas and follow through on them. You need to explore the different ideas that you might want to follow, but eventually you need to exploit, which is to take advantage of the the information or the ideas you have. You have to buckle down and execute on those ideas. And I think that's true in terms of, if you're going to set up a business, at a certain point you have to stop just coming up with new ideas and actually grow the business. And more generally in life, it's like we all have goals, we all have dreams. Like I have professional ambitions as a runner, I had competitive ambitions. Uh, and it's true that as we said at the top of the show, if each time you achieve something, it gives birth to the next goal. But it's not a very satisfying way to live if you can't find a way to uh, to to enjoy the things you've achieved and to push them to squeeze the juice out of the lemon sometimes. So uh, I, there's this explore exploit dilemma that's often talked about in the decision making literature, and what the science suggests is that it's the combination of exploring and exploiting that leads to the most fruitful um, career opportunities and so on. That it's not all about exploring. It's not all about exploiting. And you don't want to exploit, then explore, because then you're spending all this energy before you even know what you should spend it on. Exploring gives you a chance to find the best opportunities. Exploiting then is the way you take advantage of those opportunities.
It's just finding the right balance and knowing when each side of that coin is appropriate.
And much to my disappointment, I wasn't able to find a magic formula for this. I read a lot of papers and I talked to a lot of scientists, but it's like it depends. It depends on the context. Obviously, you got to understand. You got to be able to read the context. It also depends on the person. We are all wired differently, and for what might be a great opportunity for one person might be an uncomfortable risk for someone else. And so it's not that everyone has to make the decisions all the time or that there's one right answer. But if you find that it's like, it's like the way we listen to music, as we get older, we tend to, when we're young, we listen to a lot of different music. We find what we like. And the older we get, the less likely we are to explore new music. And so you might say, oh, it's important to keep exploring. And I think that's true. It's important to keep your ears open, try and find new stuff. But you don't want to just be like, if you had a rule that I'm only going to listen to any song once, I will never listen to the same song twice because exploring is more important. We can all see that that's ridiculous. And you need to, if you find a song you like, you should put it into your playlist. And I think that analogy applies in other aspects of life. It's great to discover new things. It's great to be pushing our boundaries, but sometimes you want to take advantage of what you've explored and enjoy it.
Mhm. Okay. And so, in terms of establishing yourself as a respected voice in science journalism, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you faced in doing that?
You know, one of the very first hurdles I encountered, I think, was basically credentialing. So when I just realized that I wanted to be that I was interested in switching over to journalism, I started to send out some applications for internships and send out some pitches for articles. And I didn't get very far. Nobody was I didn't I applied for gosh hundreds I think of internships and didn't get any. And I kind of realized, okay, people are seeing me as a physicist who's moonlighting, who's a dilettante, not someone who's serious about this. And so I ended up, the way I started my journalism career was I went back and did a 1 year master's degree in journalism. I learned stuff there, like it was a fun time, but I probably learned all I really needed to know in the first like 3 weeks there. Ultimately, what that degree was a credentialing exercise, a way of signaling to others, but also even to myself that this is what I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do. I have made the commitment to this. So I'm not saying that everyone who wants to do something needs to go do a 1 year master's degree in it, but finding ways, and both it was a then I could pitch people and say I have a degree in journalism, but it was also a signal to myself that this isn't just something I'm idly thinking about. I have quit my job as a physicist and jumped into the deep end, and now either I'm gonna swim as a journalist or I'm gonna sink, and it's gonna be trouble, and that gave me motivation. So I think signaling to others and to yourself that you're serious about whatever endeavor you're taking on, that's a real it can be a source of motivation, but also help advance your career.
Mhm. Okay. And how is your background in scientific research, influenced your ability to be able to take like these complex subjects and then turn them into like engaging reading material?
So, I spent whatever, a decade studying some pretty esoteric physics. And the truth is, none of those equations are almost none of those equations have any bearing on what I do now. I don't need to, be able to solve Schrodinger's equation or anything like that. But the underlying mindset is crucial in terms of, first of all, I really want to follow the train of logic of, if there's new research that I'm writing about, I really want to understand, you know, what the question was, why we want to look at this question, what the evidence did suggest, what the new evidence adds. I want to be able to lay that out in my mind in a very logical way. And then if it's clear in my mind, then I can explain it more clearly than if, it's very hard to write a clear article if you're not quite sure what's going on. And readers can tell if you're not quite sure. The other big thing about that, I think, though, is I spent a lot of time in physics talking to people who knew stuff that I didn't know. I had to get comfortable showing up and saying, I don't understand. Like nobody understands quantum mechanics. So it was no source of shame that, so I had to be able to ask questions and deal with complexity and keep asking questions until I, got the answers I needed. And so as a science journalist, it's super helpful to not be scared to talk to scientists, to not to be worried if I ask someone a question and they give me an answer that I don't understand, to be willing to say, okay, I don't have the background to be able to understand what you just said. Like, can we break it down? Like, tell me again in different words or in simpler words or in, with pictures or whatever, what it is that you're doing here. And so that willingness to engage and just to be willing to ask questions and read papers even when you don't understand them, I think that's been helpful for me.
Okay. And you've certainly been able to build a career at the intersection of your passion and your professional skills. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs out there who are looking to do the same thing?
So the classic risk is that when you make your hobby into your day job, all of a sudden or your passion into your day job, all of a sudden it's you've turned it's no longer your passion, it's now a job. And so for me, I know I've had to navigate this kind of blurring of the boundaries between things I do for fun and things I do for my job. And it's a great privilege to be, reading about running, which is a sport I love, and to be and it's I would do it no matter what, but to be thinking, oh, this is work. I'm reading about this because it's or to, to go travel to a race to cover it or whatever, and it's like this is fun, but it's also work. The the danger then is that I can never turn it off. And for a while, so I got into I did a bunch of travel journalism and like adventure travel journalism, and so my wife and I would go on. And sometimes even my wife and kids and I would go on really fun trips in cool places, but because I was going to write about it for the New York Times or someplace like that, I was always stressed out about, oh crap, I need to go walk there again. I need to get a good picture of this moment. Oh, do it again. No, oh, the light wasn't good. Do it again. And so the enjoyment could sometimes get displaced by the fact that it was also my job. And so now there's time. I'm less aggressive about making sure that every time I go on vacation, I get to sell an article about it. Sometimes I just want to be on vacation. And I think for entrepreneurs, especially if they're launching a business that's in an area they have passion and expertise in, deep passion expertise in, that's great. You want to leverage that, but you also want to think carefully about boundaries and find some ways to be where you're not thinking about your job 24/7 and you're able to turn it off.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all need those brain breaks, that white space, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, trying to being on vacation and focused on the work aspect can certainly be problematic.
Yeah, I mean it's the modern condition is that isn't it great? We can work remotely, we can go anywhere, we can go on vacation, and I can still check in with work. But then it's like, oh, isn't it terrible? No matter how far I go, I can't get away from work. Like one of the saddest things to me was when all these GPS or satellite messaging apps came out, and it's like now, no matter how deep in the wilderness I go, in theory, I can check my email. That's terrible. That's that's it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, sharing all this valuable wisdom from your journey with our audience. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. And that's all the time we have for now. We will see you next time.